We have secured an objective.
Target down. Friendly is down.
We're going after Bravo 2.
I'll get you moving. Hold on. Hostile down. Med supplies. Got it.
Hostile located in my area. But they're hurting. The objective is no longer.
Battlefield 2042's Update 4.0 just dropped the other day, and for some reason, I just had a really good feeling about this one. A lot of the tweets from the developers and the sheer size of the update were both very encouraging, and I have to say, this was a really successful update. It includes the things I mentioned in the last video, a full rework of the attachments that make them all functionally more unique and the descriptions are accurate, though they don't expose the hard numbers in terms of how much an attachment affects the performance of a weapon. Weapons do feel slightly different to use. There definitely seems to be a bit more recoil than before the update. Unfortunately though, it seems like there's been added bullet spread to the ARs and LMGs, and they feel a bit wonky to use right now. It's similar to before the patch that reduced bullet spread, but maybe not quite as bad as then. SMGs still feel really good to use though, and I've mostly been opting for the MP9 due to its reliability and versatility, and it doesn't feel like the bloom is nearly as bad on the SMGs. Sundance's grenades got tweaked to make them better against ground vehicles, Paik and Rao got some changes, and there was a balance pass for the vehicles. With McKay, you can also now grapple to moving vehicles and get dragged along with them, even helicopters. I don't think that was in the game before, and you might be able to execute some pretty cool plays with this. I'm really happy about these vehicle changes. I jumped into a 128 player conquest to try out a lot of the changes in what I feel is probably the most intended game mode, and I found myself able to move around the map a lot better without getting instantly annihilated by helicopters and bolties whenever leaving a building. The HUD updates have also been a godsend. I've heavily modified the opacity so that I can see things better. I used to lose enemies all the time among the icons all over the screen. I also increased the size of the minimap, but it seems to also increase the size of the names of your squad members, which I'm finding really distracting, so I'll bump that back down. I did also scale down the HUD elements in the bottom right of the screen to give me a bit more room to see. I think the HUD was looking a bit cluttered by default. A lot of cool little tweaks to the UI are here as well. When you're choosing a loadout in a game, you don't get the horizontal carousel that was super annoying to scroll through to find the loadout you were looking for. Now it's a vertical list, and it's much more efficient to just click and grab the loadout you want. When choosing a gun within a loadout while in game, there are green icons next to guns to indicate which weapons your squad mates are using. This is a super cool bit of information if you're tweaking loadouts on the fly and want to choose a gun that fills a gap in your squad. Unfortunately, it looks like the fire mode indicator is gone, as well as the option to keep it on permanently. It's still there when you aim down the sight, but I can't find an option anymore to keep it permanently in that bottom right. At least when I played right when the patch came out, I looked through all the settings and couldn't find a way to enable it again. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but I do like having it when using the AC-42. In a lot of instances, that gun works better as a semi-auto DMR type gun rather than a burst fire weapon. VoIP is now in the game. I don't personally ever talk in this game, but I've heard a few people using it so far, and I'm happy to see it for those that like to have more direct and immediate communication with their squad. Just be sure to bump the volume down a little bit. It's pretty loud by default. The endgame scoreboard is finally here. Not much to say about this, but at any point during the post-game flow, when you're getting your experience or seeing all of the specialist outros, you just press tab on PC to bring up the scoreboard, the same way you would in the middle of a match. Frame rates also seem to be a touch better across the board. Nothing too significant, but I feel like I'm getting roughly 10% better performance, and it's allowed me to play on Ultra a little more smoothly. While this is a small improvement, it is actually fairly noticeable. I'd love to see DLSS updated at some point as well. If I remember correctly, 2042 is using a much older version of DLSS, which is not only worse looking, but also not as performant as the more recent implementations. There are apparently some workarounds out there where you can replace a DLL file to get the newer version of DLSS, but I haven't tried that out yet. Some of the most common bugs have also been fixed. The one that was most common for me being reviving. Previously, if a down player was too close to a wall or some other object in the world, they just couldn't be revived. And I would experience this a lot from both ends of the interaction. It was really annoying and could easily get players killed, but I've had a lot of instances since the update where I've been revived in areas where it was previously impossible. A lot of animations have been improved as well. The tactical sprint animation is not as buggy as it was before, and the revive animations also seem a bit tighter as well. The star of the show for this update, though, is something that wasn't even in the patch notes. For all my mouse and keyboard PC players out there, they finally fixed the input latency. It feels so much snappier and more responsive. There's no more of that slow turning nonsense that was in the game before that made it especially difficult to kill moving targets at range. To me, I find the experience to feel similar to previous Battlefield games now, which is a great thing to see, and the developers have confirmed that sensitivity has been brought in line with previous titles in the series, and players can now just take their preferred sensitivity from Battlefield 5 and enter it in 2042. I can't emphasize enough how much this has transformed the gameplay experience for me as a mouse and keyboard player. Previously, it just felt so sluggish to play this game. It's made me so much more confident picking characters like McKay and going for faster, more aggro plays, which is typically how I like to play first-person shooters. The grapple is super versatile, and I just never felt comfortable with it before. Now though, I think it opens up a ton of opportunities to push the tempo of engagements and put down opponents quickly while constantly repositioning. And I can only imagine the same logic applies to a specialist like Sundance. I think at this point, the game finally feels like it's in a state where it might have been acceptable from a technical perspective to launch. Across a couple of play sessions for several hours each, I didn't run into any noticeable bugs. Performance was smooth and consistent, and I didn't feel like anything was wildly off from a balance perspective. The game is still sparse on content though, with only 7 maps and few guns to choose from, especially if you don't use assault rifles or machine guns. The core design issues are there as well, with this update not featuring any new content or heavy reworks to maps or specialists. As is, I think describing the overall product is most accurate as a very good beta. This is a great foundation to start from though. I think this update is a resounding success overall. Season 1 really needs to bring a lot more content to this game. We need some guns that are interesting and unique, as well as some maps that have much better design than what we saw with the launch maps. Speaking of those launch maps, those also need to get their reworks as soon as possible to make the pool a lot more pleasant. I'd love to see the cadence sped up a little bit. Getting only 2 map reworks in Season 1 feels like a small amount, and honestly, hopefully after Season 1 they can speed that up quite a bit. Specialists are the next target for major reworks from DICE, so hopefully they get some heavy changes as well. I don't think they need to be scrapped completely, but they do need some heavy reworks to be more restrained into just being variants of traditional classes rather than do-it-all heroes. I'm cautiously optimistic about what this game will look like around December. It might start getting close to being the product we all initially wanted. It's just a shame that DICE couldn't have just taken the extra year to develop the game. Rather than being forced to rush it out the door so prematurely, it's increasingly clear that another year in the oven would have been best. What do you all think about this update though? Have you tried it out? Are these changes enough to bring you back in, or are you going to wait until Season 1? Or are you just done with 2042 altogether? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike so I know I need to change something. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all in the next video.